Our experience has led the islanders to create a unique cult, the worship of America. How this extraordinary belief came about is our story. But it's a story that begins long before the fantastic invasion.
Now, I want to tell you a story about the Nepro, the time when we invented the world. We didn't want for anything. All our needs were met from the world in which we lived. Our houses were made from plaited wild cane, walls lashed together with vines and covered with leaf roofs. Our clothes were made from plaited fiber, leaves and strips of pandanus. Our mats and baskets were made from coconut leaves, the dyes from clays, and crushed leaves from the burro and neme plants. We made our axe heads from flints and strong seashells, our slit drums from the bark of the breadfruit tree. Our headdresses from hawks and fowl's feathers, our flutes and panpipes from bamboo shafts. We hunted the black hawk, the martins, honey-eaters, cockatoos and pigeons. And before we learned to plant our land, the forest provided everything. Nuts and berries, breadfruit, tree ferns, alfalfa leaves, and coconuts. All our needs were satisfied, and we wanted for nothing. And as we wanted for nothing, so all men and women were equal, and there was no strife. This was the time of the Nepro, or what you call utopia. It was the time when we invented the world. Yet our time was not like your time. It was different. Our time was measured by the sun and moon, through flowers, and the coming of birds and sea worms. A man's age was not counted in years, but in growth and ripeness. The vision of our past is beyond time. It's not a chronology, but a movement in space that comes and goes. But then you found us, and our world disintegrated. And this is how it happened, which we have decided to tell you in our own way, with my own people playing all the parts, black and white. You first came looking for us because your Aboriginal brothers refused to work on your plantations. You had outlawed slavery, but you quickly found a substitute, indentured labor. First the Indian, then the Chinese coolie, and then us. We were frightened but fascinated. Your ships were as large as floating villages. We had heard stories from our ancestors that you had an appetite for human flesh and blew smoke from your mouth. But then you showed us things that we had never believed could have existed. That these objects could be made by man seemed a miracle. You said that they could be ours too, if we came to work for you.
The recruit binds himself over to serve any employer that he may be assigned to for a space of 3 years on condition that he may be properly clothed and receive £6 per annum.
It's a matter of form at present that no one understands the nature of the contract because no one speaks any language common to us. I cannot even find out their names.
It's but a law of nature, surely, that the weak should serve the strong. Besides, is it not obvious from the very thickness of their hides, from the impervious quality of their skulls, into which no light has ever been known to penetrate, that this is the purpose for which the Creator has intended them, to be mere hewers of wood and drawers of water?
They're employed throughout Queensland on plantations, working 10 to 14-hour days, underfed and short of water. They're dying like flies.
So we cut the white man's cane, and if we lived, years later we returned to our islands, only to find that you had come back, this time to stay.
The white man has power. It's different from our power that has to be fought for and constantly maintained. The white man is passive, and his power sits on him like an invisible cloak. He brings with him weapons that can kill in a way killing has never been known. He brings food that doesn't have to be hunted or grown, and objects that no human being could ever make. The white man needs simply sit and wait, and these things, the cargo, come to him. And this cargo seems to be an endless supply, for when he wishes for more, he doesn't need to make it. No, he simply writes on a piece of paper and waits. Later, as if by magic, from a distant and inaccessible land, comes a huge ship bearing his cargo, a ship that keeps its distance as if guarding his secret from us. And it brings not just objects, but strange smells and sounds.
My dear Catherine, since I last wrote to you, I've purchased a small plantation. Copra prices are buoyant, and I hope to make a small fortune. However, life on these islands is chaotic and lawless. All I can hope for is that my pleas to the Presbyterian Missionary Society will bring someone to help me civilize these people.
What is the source of this power, this presumption? Where does it come from? The white man has his money in his God, a God that's obviously pleased with his white people. Our gods told us of the origin of the world, but they never told us about the white man. Should we trust them anymore?
So they sent a man who knew their God. Maybe he'd know the secret of their cargo, for it surely cannot be the idle white man who made these things, for he doesn't work. Surely the secret will lie in their book.
It's hard to realize the thought that I've arrived in these beautiful realms where no Sabbath smiles on the benighted people, no congregations assemble to engage in solemn services of religion, where no preacher proclaims the good news of salvation and warns them to flee from the wrath to come.
The book and the shirt. Why we had to hide our bodies from their God, we never knew. But we reasoned maybe if we put on clothes, they'd tell us the secret.
Saw a man in a shirt coming up the path. To my great joy, Lome has broken with heathenism.
It's most gratifying to visit the Islip and the Tahula and mark the change that's taken place. The men who used to visit me with painted faces and plaited hair are now found clothed and in their right mind.
Some labourers have returned from Fiji and have done a great deal. Notably, caused their women to dress.
They saved our souls at a terrible cost, and we never learned the secret. Some said the white man had torn the page which contained the secret from the book before they gave it to us. Anyway, as they spread their gospel, so death followed in its wake. In 1926, a young man arrived to write a book about us.
My notes read like the last confessions of dying men. One price these isolated races have paid is a terrible susceptibility to diseases. We're not civilizing them, we're syphiliting them, a Catholic priest here said to me with much truth. Dysentery, measles, whooping cough, influenza, pneumonia, diphtheria. Worship is lies. It makes all sick and kills us, they say. I'm going inland soon, to the big Nambus country. They're hostile towards us and have been driven there as their only chance of survival.
He died a few weeks later, the first of the experts. But where he'd been, others followed with a new device. And as they feared we wouldn't survive their onslaught, they worked obsessively to capture the image of our passing. Front views and back views. A record of our height, weight and age, and then warlike poses and thoughtful poses, and, of course, our young women. And each reported his adventures in even more vivid titles. And then they came with yet another device.
Flying northward, we look down on dense tropical forests. Human beings live there, hidden away, isolated, underprivileged people.
As we would go along this island, we would see natives watching us, and sometimes we would land and talk with them. All of them had old Snyder rifles. Some of them were marked Tower of London, 1854, and every time one of those guns was shot, it meant the death of a white man.
Treading these jungle tracks in this secular world of the 20th century are primitive Stone Age men who have not yet forgotten the taste of human flesh.
Weren't you frightened, Mrs. Johnson? Yes, I was, but I didn't dare let them know it.
Well, really, there was nothing to be afraid of until we commenced to see skulls all over the trail.
In the dark jungle depth, strange and fearsome practices of tribal leaders are still being enforced. The cruelties of a primitive people are never more vividly displayed than in the treatment of their womenfolk. These poor, cringing souls live in constant fear of men and devils.
Mrs. Johnson didn't like this job, but I wanted to show the baby from different angles in order to get an idea of just how long they bind these heads.
Fires burn constantly inside, warming naked bodies in the cold watches of the night. In the darkness of their homes and in the hopelessness of their existence, the missionary brings to them the light of the gospel and the hope of the more abundant life.
I gave some of the natives cigarettes to smoke. Some of them knew what they were for, others didn't. One tried to eat the cigarette. He thought it was food.
Living almost naked and surrounded by death and decay, the future holds no promise for them.
But he was wrong, because the Americans came, and some of them really were black.
Brothers.
I looked and there were soldiers everywhere. We didn't know where they'd come from, how they'd arrived. They arrived night after night and people woke up astonished. Night after night and day after day they came.
In 6 months they built the largest forward base in the history of warfare for the invasion of Guadalcanal, 6 airfields, 8 hospitals, 19 cinemas. A city of 250,000 American soldiers.
Samarin terakta lotome netani nagaku angenika netani laniko tetalau yefate itahi enda wet menarafi rosine pakeruan ke mahayenea rokna kenduki au kinasenia Rosine pakeruan ge mahayenea rokna kentuki au kinasenia.
Then they asked us to help them. The Americans trained us to be real soldiers. They gave us uniforms, taught us to march, and taught us to fight.
We took a truck. We went down to the firing range for practice. We were given orders. The officer told us to go over and make a line. We made a long line. We took our rifles and fired. Threw something into the air which we shot at. I shot 3 down. And the officer standing behind me, he clapped. When we were finished, everyone went back to the camp. Next day, the officer came and he gave me a present, a gun.
It was different. Quite different when the Americans came. We'd been used to a master-servant relationship, master this and master that. When the Americans came, they treated us like equals, whereas the French colonial residents and the British residents had no respect for us at all. Suddenly, the Americans came and they were completely different. Suddenly, we met white people who had love in their hearts. The French and the English, well, when they talked to you, you had to show deference. And they didn't even bother to use your names. Just boy. You hadn't got a name. You were nothing. They'd say what they liked to us, but you couldn't stand up for yourself. Whatever they said or did, whether you liked it or not, you had to accept it. Even if you knew it was wrong, you couldn't answer back.
The Americans changed our way of thinking about ourselves. We'd been used to being treated as if we were rubbish people. But the Americans gave us our dignity, and we started to think better of ourselves.
The natives started to open up their minds. We saw the Americans had ways of treating people that was completely different from what we've been used to. They treated everybody equally, and that was something we immediately recognized.
We were astonished to see how all together they were. We could see black Americans and white Americans all working together. The black Americans were just like the white man in terms of status. There seemed to be no difference, and we were astonished to see that. We'd been used to one way of living, But to the people of America, there appeared to be no difference in the status of races.
Everywhere where you go, you are a Negro.
Everywhere you went, you heard Negroes singing, and sometimes they were whistling. Once I was standing near a phone booth at night and watching a man whistling softly into the phone. He must have been whistling this tune to someone on another island, or maybe a friend back home. Anyway, I heard him singing it, and they used to sing this particular song at a club which they used to go to called the Coconut Grove. They always used to go there, and this was the blues song that they used to sing.
Mama, madam, do me. And the woods and the bands, I wish sometime to live it and sing the blues in the night. Mama, madam, do me. Now sometime only whistle him.
And that was the Negro song. You'd hear it everywhere. I really like this song, and I really like the Negroes. They also sang this song, Way Down Upon the Swinging River. I'll try and play that one.
Way down upon the swinging river, far, far away. That's where my heart is standing ever, far from the old folks at home. Oh, the world, I'm sad and weary, everywhere I roam. Oh, dark is how my heart grows weary, far from the old folks at home. Oh, the world, I'm sad and weary, everywhere I roam. Oh, dark is how my heart grows weary, far from the old folks at home.
I used to think that the reason they sang this song was because they were sad and worried. War, after all, is something special. When a man's at war, he's worried about going home. When you go to war, you fear that you might be gone forever and never come back.
Play your life, you go back. Every man will come. Time is up, only stop watching all the American soldiers.
I used to watch the American soldiers, and you could see in their eyes their sadness and their fears. They would be wondering if they'd ever return to their families.
We used to sing in the trucks, or when we were marching, we'd all sing together. It went like this.
God bless America, land that I love. Can behold her and guide her through the night with the land roam above, to the prairies, to the ocean, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. America, my home, sweet home.
They used to sing it when they were travelling, all singing together. I used to think it was really rather special.
And because they liked us, they used to sing it to us. And we learned from them. We asked them to teach us their songs. But I didn't know any English at the time, just a couple of words. But by learning their songs, I learnt their language. Line by line, I learnt from them, although I didn't know what the songs meant. But the more I learnt from them, the more I understood the songs and their importance to them. Many of them were buried in the New Hebrides. They came here and lost their lives in a place they didn't know. And they lost their lives for us. They lost their lives defending us, the people they didn't know.
Mura mura mahakamba tibarea lobanua uarega America. Ratuanda ranati utangaroa hurira itagaro nembulu kinira. Rana vano larina paramana hikani. Rana tugoro gitatina buro. Everyone stopped making guitar long hymn.
We all used to play this hymn on our guitars. The hymn is about power. Mura Mura means power. The power that's come from far away and just found us. There's a sort of prayer inside this song too. All of us were praying for the Americans, for their fighting spirit, and for them to resist the enemy and keep them away from these islands.
Today, I think if the Americans came now that we're independent, at least we should honor them and what they did for us during the war. They gave everything they had. They were defending their country, certainly, against an enemy, but they also gave their lives for us too, in these little Pacific islands.
And then they left, as suddenly as they'd come. They won the war, dug up their dead and went. But their ghosts are everywhere.
10:30 coming around. Those 10:30 upper or lower? B-17 out of control at 3 o'clock.
Come on, you guys, get out of that plane. Bail out.
There's one. He come out of the bomb bay.
Yeah, I see him. There's a tail gunner coming out.
Watch out for fighters.
Keep your eye on him, Bill. See any parachutes, Quinlan?
2 parachutes open.
Flag at 9 o'clock.
8 men still in that B-17.
Come on.
Get out of there.
Fighters, 10 o'clock.
Watch those 2 at 12, Ben. They're coming in.
They're coming in, Scotty.
Get that vulture on them. Save the ammunition as much as possible.
Watch that fighter coming in at 3 o'clock. He's coming in a half roll. Pull her up, Chief. Pull her up.
B-17 in trouble out at 2 o'clock. Watching. Got an engine on fire.
Underwater is the graveyard of their cargo. When they left, they dumped millions of dollars worth of trucks, jeeps, bulldozers, and heavy machinery in the sea. enough to build all the roads and airstrips in the South Pacific for 30 years. Then, at about this time, one day at sundown on an empty beach, a man appeared. People were astonished. Those who first saw him said he wore a white man's clothes. He stood some 40 yards away from them, at the water's edge. They couldn't see his face, but he spoke to them, and he spoke in our language. And in his hand, he carried a special stick.
He used to stand on the beach close to here. His walking stick was like a torch, and he would stand with this stick in front of him, and it shone. It wasn't really a torch, it was just a walking stick that appeared to shine. He always came and stood in the same place, and the people used to wait for him to appear. Lots of people went down to the beach and made houses there, and there were so many houses packed close together by the shore that you couldn't get through. But here, at night, he used to come and talk. Some believed, and some doubted. Most, though, thought him to be real. His name was John Frum.
Right, yes. John's words to our big men were clear. He said to them, "For many years you have been ignorant of the world. You don't know anything about the countries of the world. But I, John, know them." John said, "There are many nations of the world, but you shouldn't have faith in any of the others. Only America is your friend. Only America. Remember that. One day America will come and help you again."
Once John called all the people together and he said, "You really have a lot of trouble having to go so far for all the things that you need. But one day, everything will come right through to this place, and you won't have to do so much hard work. There will be roads so that trucks can come right through, and there'll be a store here for you. And one day, you'll have houses all made of corrugated iron to sleep in." He promised everything, and our fathers really didn't believe that this would happen, as there wasn't a road at that time, and they couldn't understand how all these things would come true, because at that time, it was very, very hard for them to earn money. So they doubted him. But finally they thought about it and said, yes, this is a man who is telling the truth.
Then the missionaries told us that we should leave the church. They said we stank of the devil, we stank of John. So the people left and they never returned. And John said to them, I bring you a cross, your own cross. And John said, my words are the same as the church's teachings. One day all that I tell you will come true. The Bible's promises are the same as my promises. And John said to us, he said, I, John, I am the road to Jesus. I am preparing the road to Jesus. I am the road. Some people criticize us, and they say that we've waited a long time for John's promises, too long. But this is exactly like the Bible. You go to church, you pray, and those things you ask for, they don't come easy. But John, he promised two specific things. He said that one day the Americans would come, and we know that they did come. So we know he's telling the truth. And John also says, if you obey my orders, I will come again.
There's an American who visited here once, and he came to my house. And I showed him this money, and I said, it's yours, isn't it? It's American money. And he said, you all helped America during World War II, so we've made this money for you. One day you'll be independent, and this money you'll be able to use it. And I looked at it, and it's dated 1977, the time when we were struggling for our independence. He said, look closely at the coin, and I looked, and you see, silver and brown, the black and the white are as one.
When you have a dream, not the kind of dream you have at night, but the dream you have when you're half awake, that's a daydream, and it's then that we receive our messages from John.
This is one of my dreams. No one told me this, it's my idea. This is Elizabeth, you see. Turn it over and you see a vine and a crown. Now I thought and I remembered what Jesus Christ said. I am the root and the fruit of the vine. And this vine should curl right round like this, you see, and join. But the crown is blocking this. This means that there's trouble, war or something evil. It's blocking the meeting of these two vines. But there will be peace. Peace in the world one day, when these two vines are joined. Now, I'm a black man, and I honor this eagle. All of us from this island honor this eagle. In America, they honor this eagle. We're the same. That's why one day we'll be part of America.
America gave us everything. They gave us everything. Planes, ships, everything that was left over here was left here for our benefit, to help us, to help with our development.
In my right hand, I hold on to my customs and my traditions. And here, this is the white side of me, in my left hand. But if I let the left side become too powerful, it'll destroy my customs and traditions. So I balance them. I love them both, but the white stays on the left and the black on the right. When I built this house, I made a traditional room. And on the other side, there's another room for the white me. So if I get a typewriter, I'll put it in this room. Or if one day I get a telephone, that'll go in here too.
Look at those old American flags. America sent them. And they sent them with a message, and there's a pledge. A pledge. The government wanted to put us both in prison, our own government. But I told them that the flags come from America. They're a symbol of John's promise to us made many years ago. Simply America.
John kept his promise to us. He promised that if we were patient, we would have money. And sure enough, it happened. Because now the tourists and the photographers and the film crews come here, and we have the white man's money. John was true to his promise. And for all of them, for the money, we perform our dance to John. It's called the volcano dance.
Now, John
told us that he has control of the volcano. And he told us that there is a road that comes here all the way from America. John's army lives down there, and we talk to them. And they send us songs. Sometimes these songs are warnings, and sometimes they are prophecies. But we always follow his path.